Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
And in a big country, dreams stay with you like a lover's voice by the mountainside. Stay alive. So take a look out of here, it doesn't fit you. Because it happened doesn't mean you've been discarded. Pull up your head off the floor, come up screaming, cry out for everything you ever might have wanted. I thought the pain and truth were things you really meant, but you can't stay here with every single hope you had shattered. Flowers in the desert, but I can live and breathe and see the sun in winter time. And in a big country, dreams stay with you.
This is a quote from the brilliant far-out mind of Arthur C. Clarke, the writer of 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is one of my favorite movies, and has a lot to say about the transcendent experience one goes through between dimensional realms, whether that's in what we call death or even in a trip of various kinds. But one thing is for certain, I agree with Arthur C. Clarke, and I would take it a step further that we live in a magical realm that is full of infinite possibility, which we have in our collective consciousness devolved into believing is a limited possibility. But there are subtle energies at play in this realm, beckoning us to rediscover them. Let me start by saying how grateful I am for all of the new subscribers and viewers. The last drop about the magic portal definitely hit its stride, and you guys y'all just blew the doors off of my gratitude buzzer. So namaste, and now let me account for myself for a lot of people who might be new to this channel. The kind of astrology that I discuss is called sidereal, which is kind of a fancy way of saying you look up at the sky and you observe the zodiac through the constellations that are within that zodiac, and that's how you tell where the planets are. So whatever the planets are in front of that zodiac, that's where it is. And believe it or not, the predominant astrology that most people know, Western or tropical Western, is one zodiac sign different from this sidereal system. So if you believe that you're a sun in Gemini, you're a sun in Taurus by the actual astronomical sky. So in other words, the Vedic sciences and arts and sciences observes astrology through real-time, real-life astronomy. You can verify what's being said in Vedic astrology by looking at the astronomy, in other words. So I have other videos that I've gone into deeper dives on why this all is, so if you guys want to check that out, feel free. The other very noteworthy thing about Vedic astrology to start off with is the constellations. So within the 12 zodiac signs, there are actually 27 constellations that the Vedic sciences can with a more granular analysis get an idea of an individual's chart. So in other words, if you're again a Gemini, there are 3 different constellations, and in Sanskrit this is nakshatras, that you could be native of. So these 3 nakshatras all operate differently, uniquely within the umbrella of the Gemini zodiac. Oh, and while I'm on the Sanskrit topic, I need to correct from my last video. I think I said avasta and I meant asta, but that's the combustion, asta. And I'll talk about how the sun, basically combusting planets, has been a big part of what's been happening in this video, because we're going to talk about Mercury, our favorite, everybody's favorite retrograde planet, and old thing of like, Mercury's always in retrograde, kind of it feels like. Yeah, that's actually kind of true because it happens every few months, and on top of this, what you'll experience with the retrograde, any retrograde, but definitely Mercury in particular, is the shadow period. And this is the main topic of this drop and kind of a regular feature on this channel. The preceding window before a retrograde is known as the shadow period. So by degree, a planet actually goes backwards, even though it's actually going in a zigzag pattern. It's just kind of creating an anomalous astronomical trajectory. But by degree, the way we observe it, it's actually moving backwards. So we can fix these degrees to dates in time and see how a retrograde might affect the period basically right before it. So the sun is almost always doing something, combusting or, getting in basically a asta is when you can't actually observe the planet because the sun is overwhelming it. So Mercury has been in this state while also being in its Nietzsche state, which is the low, subtle energy of Mercury. Mercury is the business matrix planet. It likes fast action. So being in Pisces, where it's been the past few weeks, this is the realms of the Akashic records. This is the subconscious, the dream state. And Mercury here can be quite powerful, but it can also be quite confused depending on where Mercury is in your chart. And overall, for the macro, it will definitely trigger unique ways of seeing data and day-to-day life in general. So what Mercury is actually going to do, and this is it's coming out of its combustion quite a bit, and it's going to enter, it's actually entered already today, Aries. And if you didn't know the sidereal, in other words, the actual astronomical array that these planets move in front of, you wouldn't know that this is actually very helpful to Mercury coming into Aries, which is Mars ruled, and then you have Mars over in Gemini, which is Mercury ruled. So this is called a Parivatana yoga. And this is the natural first, Aries, and the natural third house, Gemini. In other words, this is going to create a dynamic energy between these two houses. Gemini is communication, Aries is the individual. There's lots to be said on that, but you can kind of extrapolate and imagine the various scenarios that this could enhance. Aries is very much about self-engineering, self-motivation. It's the soldier standing at attention. So Mercury here can utilize that fast action that it likes to use with the help of Mars coming from its sign of Gemini. And yes, this is a great opportunity to kind of check my work, or not my work, it's the thousands-year-old Vedic work. You can go out in the night sky. I think it's usually around sunset these days where you can see it. And you'll see Mars, which is a big red planet, in Gemini, and it is next to the constellation or nakshatra Ardra. And this is in the Greek, I think, or whatever that most people know, Beetlejuice, literally like the movie, but it's spelled Geuse. And it is also big and red. So you'll see two big red spheres very close in proximity to each other when you look at least on the East Coast, like just after sunset into the evening. So shadow period. Shadow period and retrograde, and then the shadow retrace are three movements to every retrograde. And Mercury is the most fast-moving of all the planets. And this is kind of why it retrogrades so often, because it has to kind of slow its roll, depending on how everything, because electromagnetism, I don't know, it's Velikovsky, it's very deep stuff, and we don't understand any of it from our three-dimensional sciences, in my opinion. But the idea basically is Mercury in particular will retrace the 2 to 3 weeks before its retrograde. So I'll give you a date. The 7th of April will be the beginning of the shadow period. In other words, anything you do from the 7th of April until the 21st of April, which is when the retrograde actually begins, will be swept up into the retrograde. You'll have to go back over it. This is a great opportunity to at least not put the wrong foot forward. And, if anything, you can actually optimize these energies. What would you like to do again? What would you like to have another shot at? Or is there something that you can optimize in terms of just your natural balance of energy during this period, so that when the retrograde catches everybody off guard, you can swim a little bit smoother with the fishes? So this is the idea of trying to get a handle on a retrograde before it actually starts affecting the whole populace. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. There are 4 events happening during the shadow period that will influence how the retrograde gets started. And why this is really significant is sometimes we can feel like the momentum is just going in a certain direction, whether it's the way we want it to go or against our best interests. So what can happen around this turning point of the 20th, 21st of April is you can kind of get swept up in a certain trajectory and not realize that everything is actually just about to shift bigly. There are 4 different elements contributing to this potential typhoon of change. The first is on pretty much the day before the shadow period starts, April 6th, Venus moves into Taurus from Aries. So right now, for the next week, Venus, Mercury, and the north node of the moon, Rahu, will be conjunct in Aries. So you'll see a lot of communication about relationships that's very bizarre, just possibly. So once Venus moves out in the 6th or 7th, she'll have all of Taurus, which is her house, Venus rules Taurus, to herself. And this is a very nice situation for, I think in general, for the next few weeks, starting on the 6th or 7th. The second thing that I'll talk about is during this shadow period, Jupiter, Brihaspati, is going to be moving from its house where it rules, Pisces, through a Gandanta point. And this will be significant around the turning point, basically, of what I'm talking about, the 20th, 21st. And it will move into Aries, where it will essentially replace Venus and be neighbors with Mercury and Rahu. Jupiter will also be combust during this period, which means the sun will be moving along with it. So the sun will join the crowd in a few weeks around the 15th. So that actually may be the 5th thing that I forgot about. So anyhow, the Jupiter combustion will create a lack of potency when it comes to intelligence, when it comes to divine understanding. There may be some confusion about religious ideals, possibly, because Jupiter is the ruler and significator of gurus and authority figures on spiritual matters. So it could be a revolutionary time for one to study very unique sort of misfit ideas, because Rahu and Jupiter will be conjunct for a very long time for the next year. For the next 6 months. Third, or perhaps fourth thing, if you include the sun moving into Aries, which it gets exalted in around the 14th or 15th of April. So the other thing that happened on the 27th of March was something I mentioned earlier. Mars moved into the nakshatra or constellation of Ardra. And Ardra is a very intense constellation, and Mars being the planet of action and our own kind of self-agency, this can create an almost manic kind of behavior, or at least a feeling of like, I need to get this done right now, yesterday. And also Ardra is known as being the sort of portal or doorway whereby destruction leads to creation. So here I'm going to talk about how Mars will function as this kind of herald or forebearer of change and shift that's going to happen around the 2021st. So it will move out of this constellation of Ardra and into the constellation of Punarvasu, which is also in Gemini and cusps into Cancer. So Mars being in Punarvasu, which is the wealth after the storm. So in other words, Ardra creates the storm of destruction so that Punarvasu can come in and create the wealth of creation. Mars will move in literally around this 2021st window. Now, the fifth thing maybe, and especially because I need to talk about the sun here, is the eclipse that's happening, or the series of eclipses that will happen. But this first eclipse will be on the 20th of April, which, if anybody is counting at home, that's 420. There will be an eclipse of the sun as it moves into Aries with Rahu, the north node of the moon, and this is what creates eclipses. And this is obviously the lead that's buried, because there's probably more power in an eclipse than most, astronomical events that I can think of. Eclipses open major vortexes for change, and they always come in pairs. So the solar eclipse will happen on the 20th, and the lunar eclipse will happen 2 weeks later on the 4th or 5th. I'll have to double check those dates. I kind of get rolling and details fly by, but I'll flash it on the screen to verify. So in other words, this is going to be a period around the 20th, 21st of April where up is down, left is right, and it isn't going to be that way forever. Mercury is going to take over in retrograde, back over all of this stuff, and it will be in retrograde state until the 14th of May. So, in other words, during that period of, and I'll be back and forth with more drops in between because there's a lot to discuss. We're entering a very exciting and potentially turbulent time in society and culture, as everybody can see, and I have lots to say about that in the next drop. What's going on with the financial systems and governments and all of that is part of this big progression that's going to be happening and unfolding over the next 6 months in very dramatic ways. So I'll be back very soon to discuss a few steps in between and how we can all optimize what we are here to do, our desire and intention, and the path to optimal karma. So thanks for watching, and again, I could not possibly express how grateful I am to everyone who has tuned in and checked out the content, and I'll see you all soon.